Elon Musk sat silently in his office, savoring a rare pause in the relentless pace of his life, defined by boundless ambition and constant innovation. The idea had first struck him during a casual discussion with a colleague about human behavior. He had wondered, what would happen if no one recognized him? How would people treat a person who seemed to have lost everything? The thought lingered in his mind, evolving into an irresistible experiment. On a gray Thursday afternoon, weeks later, he finalized the plan. His disguise was both understated and convincing: worn-out clothes from a local thrift store, battered sneakers on the verge of falling apart, and a messy, unkempt wig. A small makeup team added just enough detail to age his face and obscure the features that regularly adorned magazine covers and headlines. The transformation was startling. Elon Musk, the billionaire visionary, now resembled an ordinary man down on his luck. He carefully chose the setting for his experiment. The Copper Elm, a high-end restaurant in Santa Fe, New Mexico, celebrated for its exclusivity and sophisticated clientele. It was the perfect environment to test his question, not to shame anyone, but to explore human nature. Would people see beyond appearances, or would their actions be guided by superficial judgments? Before leaving, Elon took a final glance in the mirror. The unfamiliar reflection staring back at him was unsettling, almost ghostly. For the first time in years, he felt anonymous, stripped of the identity that had defined him for so long. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he walked out the door, his heartbeat quicker than he'd anticipated. The journey to the restaurant was uneventful, with the city carrying on its usual rhythm of life, but for Elon, each moment felt charged with anticipation. As he approached the Copper Elm's grand double doors, he hesitated briefly before stepping inside, officially commencing his social experiment. The restaurant radiated sophistication. Chandeliers bathed the room in a warm light, illuminating the carefully arranged tables, while a low hum of conversation mingled with the occasional clink of glassware. His arrival caused a subtle ripple. Patrons briefly glanced up before returning to their meals, but the staff's attention lingered. Their eyes darted toward him, their curiosity evident. As Elon stepped across the polished wooden floor, the sound of his scuffed shoes seemed almost deafening to him. A hostess, impeccably dressed in black, approached him cautiously. Her professional smile wavered as she scanned his appearance. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice polite but tinged with unease. "Yes," Elon replied evenly, his tone calm but subdued. "I'd like a table for one." The hostess hesitated, her gaze flicking toward the bar, where the manager observed the scene intently. "We're fully booked tonight," she replied hastily, though her quick glance toward the row of empty tables betrayed the truth. Elon noticed but chose not to respond. Instead, he stood quietly, letting the tension in the air build. Across the room, a young server named Sophia observed the interaction. New to the Copper Elm, she had been working there for a few months, saving up for culinary school. Something about the man's presence intrigued her, not out of pity, but a genuine curiosity. He didn't seem like just another wanderer seeking refuge. "I can seat him," Sophia called out, stepping forward before the hostess could turn him away completely. The room fell silent momentarily, all eyes fixed on her. The manager frowned but remained silent. Elon gave Sophia a faint but grateful smile as she guided him to a small table near the kitchen doors. It wasn't the most desirable spot, but it was a seat, and he appreciated it. "Thank you," he said, his tone sincere. Sophia nodded, setting a menu in front of him. "Take your time," she said warmly, ignoring the murmurs and sideways glances from the other staff. As Elon flipped through the menu, he observed the room with quiet focus. The glances from diners varied, some curious, others judgmental. He caught snippets of whispered conversations speculating about who he was and why he was there. Even the staff seemed uneasy, their stolen glances revealing their discomfort. One server whispered loudly to another, "What's he even doing here?" Another chimed in, "This is going to scare off the regulars." Elon listened silently, each comment adding to the narrative he was building in his mind. When Sophia returned to take his order, Elon kept it simple. "Just soup and bread." "That's all?" she asked, her tone kind but tinged with surprise. "That's all," Elon confirmed. She didn't press further, disappearing into the kitchen and leaving him alone with his thoughts and the piercing stares of those around him. He could feel the weight of their judgment, but it didn't bother him. In fact, it validated his purpose for being there. People often spoke about compassion and empathy, but how many truly embodied those values when faced with an uncomfortable reality? The scene was set, and Elon's experiment was just beginning. As he waited for his meal, the tension in the room became almost tangible. Diners whispered behind their napkins, sneaking quick glances in his direction, some unable to hide their disdain. A man seated nearby leaned toward his companion and muttered, What's management thinking, letting someone like that in here? Elon stayed composed, his focus on observing the room. He noted the subtle details. How the hostess avoided looking his way, the bartender quietly laughing with a server, and the manager occasionally casting disapproving glances. Each reaction further illustrated how deeply appearances influence perceptions. Sophia soon returned, balancing a tray with a steaming bowl of tomato bisque and a small basket of bread. She set the meal before him with the same care and professionalism she would extend to any other guest. "Enjoy your meal," she said, offering a sincere smile. "Thank you," Elon replied, meeting her gaze. He could tell Sophia's actions weren't just about doing her job, they stemmed from genuine kindness. As Elon ate, he watched Sophia move gracefully between tables. She worked quickly but maintained an air of calm, handling even the most demanding patrons with unwavering patience. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed by Elon, especially when she faced a particularly difficult interaction. An older woman, clearly displeased, called Sophia over. "Why are you wasting time on him?" she asked, gesturing subtly toward Elon. "People like that shouldn't even be allowed in here." Sophia's cheeks flushed slightly, but her composure remained intact. "I believe everyone deserves respect, ma'am," she responded firmly. The woman huffed and turned back to her meal without another word. Elon couldn't help but admire Sophia's bravery. Standing up for someone society deemed unworthy was no small feat, especially in a setting like this. As Elon finished his soup, another server approached, a man in his late 20s with a stiff formal demeanor. "Are you planning to order anything else?" he asked, his tone bordering on dismissive. "No, thank you," Elon replied evenly. The server gave a forced smile before walking away, muttering under his breath. Elon caught the words "waste of space" and filed them away in his thoughts. Meanwhile, across the room, a young couple exchanged uneasy glances. The woman whispered, "What if he asks us for money?" Her partner shrugged but wore a similarly uncomfortable expression. Throughout it all, Elon remained calm, though his mind raced. This wasn't just about how he was being treated. It was about the assumptions people made without knowing anything about him. When Sophia returned to clear his table, she paused briefly. "Is everything okay?" she asked softly. Elon looked up, surprised by her question. "Yes. Thank you for your kindness," he said. Her expression softened, and she gave him a small nod before moving on. In that fleeting moment, he glimpsed the humanity he had been searching for, a flicker of empathy amidst a sea of judgment. The atmosphere in the restaurant remained tense as Elon stood from his table. His meal was done, but his experiment was far from over. The tension in the room reached its peak, and Elon knew the next phase of his plan would take things to an entirely new level. Elon slowly made his way toward the center of the room, every step drawing the attention of diners and staff alike. Sophia, balancing a tray of empty glasses, froze in place, her eyes following him with curiosity. The manager, who had been watching him closely all evening, strode toward him with a determined expression, clearly intent on removing him from the premises. "Excuse me, sir," the manager began, his tone curt. "If you're finished, I'll have to ask you to leave the establishment." Elon raised a hand, silencing him with a calm yet firm gesture. "I'll leave shortly," he replied, his voice measured. "But before I go, I need to say something." The room grew silent. The diners, who had spent the evening whispering and sneering, now turned their full attention to him, their expressions a mix of curiosity and irritation. Elon reached up and removed the wig that had disguised him. A wave of gasps rippled across the room as his true identity became clear. The face that had graced countless headlines was now unmistakable. "Elon Musk," someone murmured in disbelief. Elon let the realization sink in before speaking again. "Yes, it's me," he said, his gaze sweeping the room. "Tonight, I didn't come here as the man you know. I came as someone you wouldn't give a second glance to. I wanted to see how people treat those they believe to be beneath them." His words hung heavily in the air. "What I saw was disdain. I heard whispers. I witnessed judgment, all because of how I appeared." His voice was steady but carried a note of disappointment. "But one person, just one, treated me with kindness and respect." His eyes found Sophia, who stood rooted to the spot, her tray still in hand. "Sophia," he said, motioning for her to come forward. "You didn't know who I was, yet you chose to treat me like a human being. That's the kind of character that matters." Sophia's cheeks turned crimson as she carefully set down her tray and approached hesitantly. "I was just doing my job," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "No," Elon replied, shaking his head firmly. "You went beyond that. You showed empathy when it would have been easier to ignore me." The diners shifted uncomfortably, their gazes now fixed on Sophia, a mix of guilt and admiration written across their faces. Elon turned his attention back to the room. "To those of you who judged me tonight," he said, his voice carrying authority. "Let this be a lesson. Appearances can be deceiving. The way you treat others reveals who you truly are." Reaching into his pocket, Elon pulled out a small envelope and handed it to Sophia. "This is for you," he said. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, she found a handwritten note and a check. Her voice quivered as she read the note aloud. "Sophia, thank you for your kindness. Use this to follow your dreams. Culinary school, your own restaurant, whatever you choose. The world needs more people like you." Tears streamed down her face as she finished reading, and the $50,000 check slipped from her fingers. A wave of murmurs filled the room, a mixture of shock and awe. Elon turned to the manager. "For this restaurant, let this serve as a reminder to cultivate a culture of respect for everyone who walks through your doors." The manager, visibly flustered, gave a small nod but remained silent. The atmosphere was charged with tension and regret as Elon made his way to the exit. Before stepping out, he glanced back at Sophia. "Never lose that spark of kindness," he said. "It's rare, and it's powerful." With that, he left, the door closing softly behind him. The room remained silent long after he was gone. Patrons who had whispered cruel comments earlier now sat uncomfortably, some avoiding eye contact while others fidgeted with their utensils. Sophia stood in the middle of it all, clutching the note tightly, her emotions a blend of gratitude, disbelief, and pride. The manager approached her cautiously, his usual confidence replaced with unease. "You handled yourself well tonight," he said, his voice softer than usual. Sophia looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Thank you," she replied simply. Sophia responded to the manager with a polite yet distant tone. She couldn't ignore the fact that he had been among the first to doubt Elon's presence, and his change in demeanor now felt like too little. Too late. Across the room, a family that had openly stared at Elon earlier whispered among themselves. The father let out a heavy sigh, his expression a mix of guilt and regret. "We shouldn't have judged him like that," he admitted to his teenage son, who nodded silently. At another table, a woman dabbed her eyes with a napkin, her voice trembling as she spoke to her partner. "What if we've treated other people the same way? People we didn't even notice?" Sophia continued her work quietly, clearing dishes and resetting tables. Yet, the weight of what had happened lingered in the air. Every interaction with a customer seemed charged with an unspoken apology, a shared acknowledgement of a lesson learned. As the evening wound down, Sophia retreated to the kitchen for a moment to catch her breath. She unfolded Elon's note and reread it carefully. Beneath his message of gratitude, he had written one final line. "Kindness is the currency that never loses its value. Keep spending it." Her heart swelled as she tucked the note back into her apron pocket, its words a powerful reminder of what truly mattered. When the last table was cleared and the staff began cleaning up, the atmosphere in the restaurant felt different. The usual chatter and laughter had been replaced by a quiet, thoughtful energy. As the team gathered for their customary end-of-shift meeting, the manager, unusually subdued, addressed them. "Tonight was unusual," he began, choosing his words carefully. "And I think we all have something to reflect on after what happened. Let's make sure this place truly represents the values we claim to stand for." Sophia noticed a few co-workers glancing her way, some offering small, respectful smiles. She didn't need their approval, but it felt good to know her actions hadn't gone unnoticed. As she left the restaurant that night, the envelope securely tucked into her bag, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The money would change her life, but the lesson she had witnessed would forever shape how she viewed and approached the world. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, but to Sophia, everything seemed sharper, more vivid. Elon Musk's experiment had left a profound impact, not just on her, but on the restaurant and everyone who had been there to witness it. In the days that followed, news of Elon Musk's Undercover experiment spread like wildfire. Social media buzzed with discussions, and headlines ranged from "Elon Musk tests humanity at upscale restaurant" to "Billionaire rewards kindness in unforgettable experiment." The Copper Elm quickly became the center of attention, though much of it was unflattering. Stories of the staff's and diners' initial reactions sparked widespread criticism and self-reflection. Comment sections overflowed with debates about empathy, societal judgment, and the influence of appearances on perceptions. Sophia's life transformed almost overnight. Reporters sought her out, eager for her perspective. Overwhelmed by the sudden attention, she was hesitant to speak at first. But when she finally did, her words were simple yet impactful. It wasn't about knowing who he was, she explained to one journalist. It was about treating someone with dignity, no matter their circumstances. That's something we should all strive to do, not just for billionaires in disguise, but for everyone. The $50,000 check allowed Sophia to enroll in culinary school, a dream she had thought was out of reach. More importantly, the experience gave her a platform to advocate for kindness and inclusivity, not just in the service industry but in all areas of life. As for Elon, he reflected on the experiment privately. Months later, in a brief interview, he shared his thoughts on the experience. "It reminded me that the smallest actions can reveal the biggest truths," Elon reflected. "Kindness isn't about grand gestures. It's about the everyday choices we make." The Copper Elm also underwent significant changes. The management introduced new training programs that emphasized empathy and respect for all guests, regardless of their appearance. Staff members, especially those who had been dismissive that evening, found themselves re-evaluating their biases and behavior. For those present in the restaurant that night, the experience left a lasting impression. Many returned to their daily routines with a renewed perspective, carrying the memory of that evening as a reminder to approach others with compassion. In the end, Elon's experiment became more than just a story about a billionaire in disguise. It delivered a powerful message about humanity, a kind of humanity that transcends wealth, status, and appearances. While the world eventually moved on, Sophia and the others who had witnessed that night never forgot the ripple effect of a single act of kindness. The experiment proved that in a society often preoccupied with outward success, true character shines brightest in the moments when it is least expected. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who might need it today. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, challenge, and bring us closer together.